golden light of late afternoon spilled across the long driveway of the Harrington estate, catching on the polished iron gates and the manicured hedges that lined the approach. The place had an air of quiet authority, the kind of beauty that money could buy but history could deepen. Inside the small gatehouse, an older man in a crisp but slightly faded blue uniform stood waiting, his cap shadowing his eyes. The brass nameplate on his chest read Harper, but that wasn't his real name. Under the disguise was Charles Harrington, one of the wealthiest men in the country. His name was carved into skyscrapers, printed on philanthropic awards, whispered in boardrooms. He was a man accustomed to deference, but now he stood humbly in the role of a gatekeeper, quietly opening and closing doors for visitors. He had a reason, a deeply personal one. Charles had one son, Daniel. After losing his wife years ago, Daniel had become his entire world. And now Daniel was in love. The young woman's name was Emily Carter, a schoolteacher from a small town. She was stunning, poised, and spoke with the kind of warmth that charmed everyone at social gatherings. Daniel believed she was the one. But Charles had learned a painful truth over the decades. Not everyone who smiled at you meant it. Wealth was a magnet, it attracted gold, but it also drew iron shavings of greed and selfishness. Charles had seen too many perfect people turn cruel when they thought no one important was watching. And so, a plan formed in his mind. For 1 week, Charles would live not as the billionaire owner of the estate, but as the man who worked its gates. No introductions, no hint of his real identity, just a humble old employee named Harper. If Emily's love for Daniel was genuine, her respect for others, especially those beneath her, would be too. The first day Emily arrived, she swept through the gates in a gleaming car, red lipstick perfectly applied, heels clicking sharply on the pavement as she stepped out. Charles opened the gates with a polite nod. "Good afternoon, miss," he greeted softly. She barely glanced at him. "You can move a little faster next time," she said, sliding her sunglasses back on as she walked away. Charles kept his expression neutral, but the words lodged in his mind. The next few days didn't improve much. Emily's greetings, if they came at all, were curt. She brushed past the gardeners without acknowledgement, ignored the cooks unless she wanted something, and seemed to treat the staff as part of the furniture rather than people. Daniel, ever trusting, told Charles she was just shy around new people, but Charles had a growing knot of doubt in his chest. On the 7th day, Charles decided it was time for a decisive test. He would see how Emily behaved when she believed no one of importance was watching. The gates were opened that afternoon as Charles stood in uniform, wiping dust from the bars. Daniel had just stepped out from the house in casual clothes, heading toward the gates for a walk. Emily emerged from the estate in a striking red dress that caught the sunlight like a flame. She spotted Charles and walked toward him with an expression that wasn't quite a smile. "Harper," she said, drawing out the name with a faint curl of her lip. "Do you know what I absolutely can't stand?" Charles looked up from his work. "No, Miss Carter." "People like you," she said lightly, though there was steel beneath her tone. "People who think they can chat with me as if we're on the same level." Before Charles could reply, she reached into her handbag and pulled out a chilled glass bottle of soda. With a sharp twist, she popped the cap, leaned forward, and tipped the entire drink over his head. Cold, sticky liquid cascaded down Charles's hair, soaking into his uniform and dripping from his sleeves. The carbonation hissed faintly, mingling with the soft patter of drops hitting the gravel. Charles stood perfectly still, eyes closed, the humiliation settling on him heavier than the soda. "Maybe now you'll remember your place," Emily said with a smirk, stepping back. From behind, a voice rang out sharp and incredulous, "Emily." She turned quickly. Daniel was standing just a few yards away, frozen mid-step, his face pale and eyes blazing. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" Emily blinked, trying to compose herself. "Daniel, it was just a joke. He's fine." "A joke?" Daniel's voice was cold now. "That's not how you treat people." Emily crossed her arms. "It's just the gatekeeper. Why are you acting like it's such a big deal?" Charles finally lifted his head. Slowly, he removed the cap from his head, letting the light catch the features Emily had never taken the time to really see. His gaze met hers, calm but unyielding. "I'm not just the gatekeeper," he said softly. "My name is Charles Harrington. I'm Daniel's father." Emily's eyes widened, her mouth opening slightly as the color drained from her cheeks. She turned toward Daniel in disbelief. "This is your father?" Daniel nodded, jaw tight. "Yes, and he's been here all week, watching." Daniel, I didn't mean." Charles held up a hand. "No need to explain. This wasn't about what you meant. It's about who you are when you think no one important is watching." His voice was steady, but a sadness hung in it. "And what I saw was cruelty, Miss Carter, a heart that values status over kindness." Emily's voice broke. "Please, I can change." "No," Daniel interrupted quietly, his face unreadable. "The right person wouldn't need to change to treat people with respect. I thought you loved me, but I can't marry someone who talks about levels when it comes to human beings." Silence hung heavy in the air. Emily's eyes shimmered, but she knew the decision was final. She turned, walking through the gates with quick, unsteady steps, disappearing down the long drive. Daniel stood there for a moment, then looked at his father. "I didn't see it, Dad. I wanted to believe." Charles placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his voice gentle now. "That's why I had to be sure. One day, you'll meet a woman who treats the gatekeeper with the same kindness she shows the man who owns the gates. That's the woman worth marrying." And as the gates swung shut behind them, Daniel knew this wasn't just about love. It was about a truth his father had lived by for decades. Money can open doors, but character keeps them open.